In the first week of school, I frequently dreamed of two men, both claiming to be my boyfriends. When I woke up, my whole body was sore, so I went to see a psychologist. It's just that you're under too much stress. Don't be nervous. He smiled gently and prescribed some medicine for me. After taking these, you'll fall asleep early. Later, I found that my dreams became even longer. In the dream, another man held my hand and chuckled softly. I've told you to be a bit more gentle. It's been too long. And she can't bear it. One look at you. So beautiful. The big hand across my collarbone was beautiful and slender, but I couldn't see his face clearly. Shirley, wake up. Suddenly, someone woke me up from my sleep. My roommate Lucy sat on the bedside with a worried look on her face. She touched my sweaty forehead and said, "Shirley, do you have a fever? Your face is so red. Do you want to go to the hospital?" At this moment, I was lying on the small bed in the dormitory, sweating all over. My heart was pounding against my ribs, and my whole body was sore. I'm fine. As soon as I opened my mouth, my voice was hoarse. The alarm clock in the dormitory was ticking. I moved my wrist, and the pain left over from the dream seemed somewhat real. Before being woken up, those two crazy men were studying how to tie my hands and hang me in front of the full-length mirror. This was the fourth time this week. Since moving into this dormitory, I had begun to dream frequently. Every time in my dreams, two men would appear. I couldn't see their faces clearly. One was a bit older, gentle and warm, with long fingers and a precious watch on his wrist. His voice was so charming that it could make one's legs go weak. He was like a refined scoundrel. The other was younger. Although he always spoke with a smile, he was actually a radical. He showed no mercy to me at all. Both of them claimed to be my boyfriends, and they went all out to torment me. Every time I woke up, I would feel sore all over my body. When getting out of bed, I even needed to hold onto the bedpost to steady myself for a while. "Shirley, we'll be late for the anatomy class. Are you coming?" Lucy, holding her textbooks, interrupted my thoughts. I'm a medical student, a firm atheist, so I thought all those strange dreams were due to the great stress at the beginning of the school term. But I didn't dare to tell Lucy. She was so delicate. Even when watching horror movies, she would huddle in the corner. It was better not to tell her about this. 3 on Friday afternoon. The anatomy classroom was crowded. Lucy had already found seats in the first row of the classroom. "Shirley, where are you going?" She waved at me in the crowd. I was still thinking about my dreams and realized that I had walked past. There were a lot of people moving around. When I was moving backward while carrying my things, someone tripped me from behind. I was about to fall down with my books. Suddenly, a strong and powerful hand appeared on my lower back. Hot and broad. With a gentle push, it stopped my backward fall. "Be careful. It won't be good if you get wet." The slow and low-pitched laugh made my legs go weak. Because in my dreams, I had heard this voice easing me countless times. Wasn't this spooky? Lucy mouthed the word senior towards the person behind me. I slowly turned around. It was Ryan, a senior several years above us, currently a doctoral candidate and an assistant in the anatomy class. He stood behind me, slightly tilting his head. His drooping eyebrows were handsome. Under his long eyelashes were black eyes full of laughter. "Do you need my help?" I broke out in a cold sweat reflexively and quickly took 2 steps back. No, thank you." Senior, his eyes fell on my face, and he smiled slightly. "Sit down. Class is about to start." Classmate. I had never talked to him before. There were countless girls chasing after him in the school, but I had never heard that he had a girlfriend. There were rumors that his preferences were very unusual. The sunlight filtered through the window. Ryan stood in front of the podium, wearing a white coat. His figure was like a god, cutting the light into segments. He had already put on white latex gloves and picked up a scalpel. The material of the gloves fit his skin seamlessly, and his 5 fingers moved freely among the flesh and blood. Lucy shyly grabbed my hand. Shirley, do you know that seniors' dissection skills are well known far and wide? She spoke a bit louder. Ryan seemed to have heard it and looked over with a faint smile. His light-colored pupils landed on my face. But it didn't feel warm. Instead, there was an intriguing scrutiny, and his deep gaze made one's scalp tingle inexplicably. I carefully huddled closer to Lucy. On the podium, Ryan's 5 fingers moved nimbly, and his dissection movements were quick and efficient. His cold voice echoed in the classroom as he began to explain the textbook knowledge to us. I couldn't help but recall my dreams. He also used such skills to toy with people skillfully until you broke down and begged for mercy. I must be crazy. I need to see a doctor. After class, ignoring Lucy's shouts, I packed up my textbooks and fled in a hurry. For the school hospital was on the south side of the school, not far from the campus. Friday afternoon was the peak time for patient flow in the hospital. I registered for the psychology department and walked in when my number was called. The consulting room was very quiet. The glow of the setting sun shone in through the window. Only the mechanical sound of the mouse clicking could be heard. At first sight, a fair and slender hand was gently placed on the round mouse. The watch on the wrist refracted a dazzling light. Against the light, I could barely make out his blurry side face and the excellent outline of his broad shoulders and narrow waist. This was Ian, a well-known psychology professor in our school. Young as he was, he not only had an excellent academic mind but also a charming appearance. His whole body exuded an air of cold-blooded asceticism. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. My heart trembled. The voice line that was so charming as to make my legs weak. On a calm dusk, gently poured into my ears. I thought of that big hand that had confined me in front of the full-length mirror. And the voice that, with a laugh, asked me to look up at the mirror. I must be really crazy. Whenever I saw someone, I suspected that he was the man in my dream. "Classmate, are you listening to me?" Ian's gentle gaze swept over from above the rim of his glasses, pulling my thoughts back. I licked my dry lips and found that he was not writing the medical record with his head down but folding his arms, leisurely preparing to listen to my statement. "Sorry. I was listening, as if I had made a mistake." I sat up obediently. It seemed that just one more look would be a desecration of him. "Don't be nervous. Just tell me if there are any problems." His voice was warm and mellow and pleasant to the ear, easily soothing my anxiety. I nodded and stammered. "I've been having nightmares lately. It has been for a whole week already." After that, my face burned uncontrollably. Ian's eyes gradually became serious. "Nightmares? Are there any details?" I was tongue-tied. "Well, it can't really be counted as a nightmare. Just being teased." A trace of astonishment flashed in Ian's cold eyes. His pen tapped gently on the tabletop with a regular rhythm. He seemed to be interested. He leaned forward. So what do you think is the reason?" I was so nervous that I clenched my hands. "Maybe too much stress, which led to a decline in sleep quality." "Are you tired when you wake up?" Ian's voice was gentle and slow, making people unconsciously follow his train of thought. "Yes, Professor. I am very tired." He gave an understanding smile and wrote something on the medical record book. "You're just under too much pressure. Don't be nervous. I'll prescribe some medicine for you. Take it on time, and it will make you fall asleep early." I felt a great sense of relief. "Thank you, teacher." I hoped that after taking the medicine, this blush-inducing symptom could be alleviated a little. 5 that night, I sat at the table, took out the sleeping pills I had bought, and placed them on the table. Lucy stared at me, hesitated to speak. "Did you go to see Professor Zhu for medical treatment today?" "How did you know?" "Nothing." Her eyes were dim. She handed me a glass of sweet-flavored water. "By the way, Shirley, I think Senior Wan is a nice person." "What do you think?" "Nice? Maybe. I took a sleeping pill with the water Lucy handed me. The effect of the medicine came on quickly, and I muddled into a daze. I thought that I could finally have a good night's sleep tonight. But the dream came back again. It was those two men again. A cold voice came. She's not in good spirits today. Be a bit more restrained. The vision was bright. And I thought of Ryan. But I didn't have the strength to call out his name. Suddenly, there was a low laugh from another mature man beside my ear. Who comforted me? Good girl. It's just a routine checkup. It won't hurt you. I mumbled in response and struggled randomly. But I just couldn't wake up. There were 3 scents floating in the air. Frankincense mixed with citrus and disinfectant. That was the combined scent of the two of them. Help. Even in my dreams, they were still forcing me to review the exam content. Another man said softly beside me, "So cute." After that, he bowed his head and kissed me. I was worried and resisted desperately. Suddenly, my lips hurt, and the smell of blood spread in my mouth. I groaned muffled lie and almost choked to death. I felt out of breath, like a dehydrated fish. Opening my mouth continuously, the man's hand was placed under the back of my head, patting my face. "Shirley. Breathe. You're going to suffocate yourself," Ryan chuckled helplessly. "I've told you to be a bit more gentle. It's been too long. She can't bear it." Boom accompanied by a loud noise. The dream ended abruptly. I woke up and found myself sitting on the floor of the dormitory. I also knocked over the water base and placed beside the bed. Lucy's sleepy voice came from above. "It's the weekend today. Shirley. Why are you not sleeping in and making such a fuss?" "Sorry." I mumbled an apology and found that I was extremely weak all over. As if I had just run a marathon. Only then did I realize it belatedly. I had a dream again last night. The symptom of dreaming not only had not been alleviated but had become more prolonged. I held on to the bed railing, trembling all over. A weakness from the depth of my soul made me feel it was a struggle even to stand up. After a few minutes of rest, I forced myself to get up and fetched a glass of water. When my lips touched the water, sporadic stings made me frown. It hurt so much. I walked into the bathroom. I saw the girl in front of the mirror was wearing a simple unprinted camisalo pajama. Her hair was messy, and her cheeks were flushed. At the position of my lips, there was a very small wound. A bite? It was broken? I shakily raised my wrist. On the inside of my wrist, extremely faint red marks appeared on the delicate skin. I in the mirror wide and my eyes in disbelief and immediately turned pale. Was all of this really just a dream? 6. I fell into self-doubt. Was it my improper thoughts? Or, "Shirley, what are you thinking about?" Lucy interrupted my thoughts. "There is an elective course today. The teacher will take attendance. I really envy her. She can have a good sleep every day." 10 minutes later, I dragged my tired body into the classroom. My back was sore and my legs hurt. Just like an old person. As expected, we were both late. Late students. "Come and sit in the front." As soon as my butt touched the seat, the teacher's voice came. Looking up, "Ryan." He propped his hands on the podium, with a gentle smile. But the classroom was dead silent. After all, in the elective course last semester, he just failed half of the students. Biting the bullet. I sat in the front row of the classroom with Lucy. Ryan didn't criticize me on the spot. He just paused slightly when he called my name. "Student Shirley. Why are you late today?" My voice was as low as a mosquito's. "Didn't get up." "Oh. What did you do last night?" I choked a little. "Exercise." Ryan suddenly laughed. "As far as I know, exercise has to be done continuously to be effective. Student Shirley might need more practice." I blushed. "Okay." In the second half of the class, Ryan ignored me no more. Lucy propped her chin and said softly, "Senior Dwan is self-disciplined and has a great future. If I were you, I would be overjoyed." I sensed something wrong. What do I have to be happy about? After all, in the eyes of outsiders, Ryan and I have no relation at all. Why did it seem like Ryan liked me when it came from Lucy's mouth? She was taken aback and rubbed the tip of her pen. Oh. You're focusing on the wrong thing. 7 after class. I packed up my textbooks and wanted to rush back to catch up on some sleep. Ryan suddenly called me from behind. Shirley. Come here. I have something for you. His voice was cold, clearly with a businesslike attitude. I hesitated for a moment and then walked back. Ryan picked up a black bag from under the podium. For you. What? Plasters. He lowered his head to pack up his teaching plan. For sprains caused by exercise. This will make you recover faster. He glanced at me. Lucy told me. She chose my supervisor and is now my junior sister. So that's how it is. I was stunned for a moment and felt ashamed of my wild speculations. No wonder Lucy was so strange. With Ryan's strange attitude. Did she mistakenly think that he liked me? So she tried hard to match us together. When I returned to the dormitory that day, I bought some snacks for Lucy. She was busy doing something in front of the computer. I quietly approached, wanting to surprise her. But when I saw clearly what was on her computer screen, the smile on my face froze instantly. She was studying. Knot tying? All kinds of knot tying methods. Enough to tie a person up tightly. Hearing the movement, Lucy turned around and saw me. Looking scared, she quickly closed the computer. Shirley. Why are you back? Her eyes were evasive and she looked flustered. My mind was in chaos. Mechanically, I threw the snacks into Lucy's arms. Bought them for you. Lucy nonchalantly threw the snacks aside and took my hand. Thank you. Although she was polite in general. But this time, it made my skin crawl. You were just. She blinked. Learning knot tying. The surgery teacher just taught it, and I wanted to practice. Really? I tried hard to keep calm. Because those knots just now were not the surgical, knot tying methods taught by the teacher at all. Lucy put her arm around mine and started to change the topic. I'm just hungry. Shirley. Come have dinner with me. I stared at her back with complicated eyes and suddenly had a bold guess. My dream might be just imagination. But the traces in reality were created by Lucy. The more I thought about it, the worse it got. It seemed that I couldn't bear to continue living with her. That night, I submitted an application to change dormitories to the counselor. The counselor said that the earliest reply would be next Wednesday, which meant that I needed to stay in the dormitory with Lucy for another 2 or 3 nights. Before going to bed, she still handed me a glass of honey water as usual. I poured it out when she went to the toilet. It was late at night. Out of nervousness, I lay in the dark, staying alert all the time. Finally, because I was too tired, I fell asleep. When I opened my eyes again, it was already dawn. Lucy had put on her clothes, with her black hair smoothly draped behind her back. She said gently, Shirley, I'm going to the cafeteria. What do you want to eat? I'll bring it for you. This was the first good sleep I had had in a long time. Thank you. No need. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, and quietly let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that I had found the problem. Lucy had drugged me. As long as I was a little more cautious, there would be no problem. In the following few nights, I avoided Lucy's honey water and slept very soundly. Probably Lucy had noticed something. When she looked at me, there was an apologetic look in her eyes. And she even bought me snacks every now and then to apologize. Since there were some things that I couldn't respond to, it was not good to make it clear. The only way was to wait for the counselor's notice. 9 the day before moving dormitories, I went to the hospital for a follow-up visit. First, I wanted to thank Kian. And second, I wanted to ask how to relieve mild anxiety. At the entrance of the hospital, I met the head of the study department. When he saw me, he greeted me with a big, enthusiastic smile. Shirley, What a coincidence. Are you here to see a doctor? He has been courting me for some time. He is quite passionate. I have rejected him several times. But he has been persistent. It was a bit awkward to meet him now. Yes. I'm going to the psychiatric department. He was surprised and said, Are you under a lot of study pressure lately? It's okay. Don't be nervous. I'll go in with you. With that, he dragged me upstairs. There were relatively few people in the psychiatric department today. After greeting the nurse at the entrance, he pulled me and directly pushed open the door of Ian's consulting room. Professor Zgu. I have a junior here to see you. His words came to an abrupt halt. In the bright consulting room, Ian had his legs crossed and was sitting leisurely in his office chair, while Ryan had his hands in his pockets and was lazily leaning against the window. Hearing the noise, they both turned around simultaneously. Against the light, I couldn't see their expressions clearly. Suddenly, I just felt a chill on my back, as if being stared at. The head of the study department scratched his head and said, I'm sorry. The nurse at the entrance said you had no patients. So what are you two, Shirley? Ryan interrupted him in a flat tone. The head of the study department gave an honest-looking smile and said, I'm courting her. As soon as he said that, the room fell silent. Ian folded his hands and let out a low laugh that seemed sarcastic yet not entirely so. Ryan took his hands out of his pockets and stood up straight. The atmosphere in the room grew heavier bit by bit. I blushed and said, You don't talk nonsense. The head of the study department pushed me forward a little and said, Well, I have something else to do. I'll leave first. Bang. The door closed, leaving only the three of us in the room. I didn't expect that they knew each other. I'm sorry. I'll go out first. Ryan walked towards me. I staggered back a few steps, watching helplessly as he got closer and closer until he blocked the light. There was a faint smile hidden in his dark eyes. He approached me and his hand went around my waist. Only a click was heard. The door was locked. The next moment, I heard him sneer. Ian, this is your brilliant idea. Let her have a few days off, and she gets herself a wild man. Boom. A buzzing sound swept through my brain. My thoughts froze, and my face gradually turned pale. Ian stood up and stood in front of me and Ryan. He took off his watch and said gently, So, to show our apology, you go first. 10. At dusk, the hustle and bustle in the hospital gradually quieted down. Ryan held the back of my head and ruthlessly pushed me towards his lips. The scent of citrus filled my mouth. The afterglow of the sunset was reflected in my pupils, also illuminating my panic. But they seemed not to notice. Ian casually hugged me from behind, and his fingers gently stroked my nape. What are you afraid of? Haven't you been through this before? My mind became a mess, and I couldn't figure out why I had ended up like this. Ian gently pinched my red-hot ear and said, I originally wanted to let you rest for a while, but you're too eye-catching. If someone likes me, what does it have to do with you two? Ryan rubbed my swollen lips and smiled. Look, she doesn't seem to know what she's done wrong. He took me, who was as limp as a rag, from Ian, with his arm supporting my waist. Where is the lounge? Ian folded his arms and said softly, The small partition door on the right. What are you going to do? Of course. Have the main course. Ian stayed outside. I was dragged into a dark lounge. There was a faint smell of white pine in the air, and Ian's work ID was placed on the bedside table. It was his private space. Ryan threw me onto the bed. I quickly crawled forward a few steps, but Ryan grabbed my ankle and dragged me back. Why are you running? I was so worried that I was sweating all over my head. No. I'm not well. Stop pretending. Ryan let out a light laugh. I did all your physical examinations. Don't I know? In a panic, I kicked Ryan in a certain place. He groaned and grabbed me. Shirley, if you cripple me, I still won't let you go. An amorous atmosphere quietly spread in the air. Ryan wrapped me in a small space and gently kissed my forehead. The gap in strength was too great. My resistance, in his eyes, was just like tickling. So those things were really not dreams. Lucy was his junior sister, and also his inside accomplice. The familiar touch came, and I couldn't help trembling, feeling desperate suddenly. The voices of nurses came from outside the door. I suddenly raised my head. Help him, MPH. Ryan reached out in time and pulled me into the darkness. Naughty girl. Who do you want to be saved by? Professors, ooh. Is there anyone inside? Yes. A newly adopted kitten. Wow. We love cats. Can we have a look? Ian smiled and refused. I'm sorry. It's too young to be seen. I'm afraid it will get sick. Because of my intense struggle, I was sweating all over. And finally, I lay limply on the bed like a dead fish. Fate is against me. Suddenly, the glass door was pushed open. A beam of light shone on the closed blinds. Ian stood at the door and said gently, I'm afraid it won't work today. Let's change to another place. Ryan hissed. Ian, are you reliable? He propped himself up with his arm and sat up on the bed, only to find Ian leaning against the door, looking at me without restraint. He casually picked up the quilt and wrapped it around me, then took a few tissues to wipe the sweat off my face. A series of these actions made Ian chuckle lightly. I've seen it before anyway. Can it be hidden? I cleared my throat, swallowing the hoarseness. Can I leave? As soon as the words were out, both of them stared at me with a half-smiling look, as if I had asked an extremely stupid question. A few minutes later, sandwiched between the two of them, one on the left and one on the right, I walked past the nurse with a red face. Huh? Professor, does this young lady need help? With a slight movement of the hand hidden under the windbreaker, my whole body tensed up, and I shook my head vigorously. No need. Thank you, Ryan smiled. Almost got discovered. Surely, you don't want to be humiliated in public, do you? 77. Even until getting into the car, I hadn't found a proper chance to escape. Ian got into the driver's seat, and Ryan and I sat in the back. Suddenly, my cell phone rang. It was a call from my counselor. Ryan raised his eyebrows slightly. I swallowed. Let me answer it. If you can't get in touch with someone, you'll be in trouble. Put it on speaker. I did as Ryan said. And the next second, a counselor's voice came through. Surely, you can move your dormitory ahead of schedule today. Go back and pack your things. The car, which had just started, braked suddenly. If Ryan hadn't held me, I would have flown forward long ago. Ian tapped the steering wheel gently. It seemed Shirley isn't stupid either. His pair of cold phoenix-like eyes, through the rear-view mirror, landed on my flustered face. The corners of his eyes lifted, showing a faint smile. Ryan, what do you think? My heart skipped a beat. Leaning against Ryan's arms, I whispered, please, let me go back. After a brief consideration, Ryan smiled. Seems like it's not impossible. They called Lucy over. In late autumn, Lucy, wearing a knee-length windbreaker, picked me up from the car. This time, she was no longer as gentle as before, roughly grabbing my wrist. She dragged me towards the dormitory building. I couldn't believe that I was let out like this. All the way, I questioned Lucy. Do you know what you're doing? Lucy didn't say a word. I thought she might be crazy too. Suddenly, I shook off her grip forcefully and ran towards the permanent police booth beside the student dormitory building. Help! Someone is trying to kidnap me. The uncle in the police booth was drinking water and choked in surprise. Putting down the water cup, he said, What's going on? Little girl? Speak slowly. 12. The commotion was so big that half an hour later, the counselor also arrived. Lucy sat opposite, still looking like a well-behaved good student. Lucy, what's going on? Lucy's eyes were red. and there were still scratches on her left arm from falling to the ground. I don't know. Teacher. Shirley hasn't been in a good mental state lately. I wanted to take her to see a psychiatrist. But I was so nervous that my palms were sweating. I'll repeat it again. It's Ian and Ryan. They want to imprison me. The expression on the counselor's face froze. Not only her, but others also showed the same expression. They simply didn't believe it. Teacher Zhang. I heard that there's a problem with a student. Ian's characteristic voice came from outside the door. The next second, dressed in a suit and tie, he appeared at the door, his jaw slightly raised, half of his face bathed in light. With a calm expression, an invisible sense of oppression hit me. I could even see the interest hidden in his eyes. As if a cat was teasing a mouse trapped in a cage. The counselor immediately stood up. I'm sorry, Professor Zhu. Sorry to bother you. One of my students said. You want to imprison her? Ian lifted his eyelids and smiled slightly. It's you. Do you know each other? The counselor became nervous and instinctively moved to block in front of me. Ian nodded. She came to the psychology department for treatment a few days ago. The diagnosis was severe paranoia. It's not like that. I suddenly stood up. Ian, you're lying through your teeth. Ian pushed his glasses up, looking regretful. Such a well-behaved child. Unfortunately, she has mania. I demand to change the doctor. Lucy started to cry. Teacher, Shirley has been taking sleeping pills these days. And the dosage is increasing. Sometimes there are also marks on her body from being tied. And she only met Teacher Wen once a few days ago. How could Teacher Wen have any ideas about her? The counselor's gaze changed from vigilant to worried. Shirley, don't get excited first. Let's talk slowly. I uncalmly made a suggestion. Teacher Zhang, for the safety of the student, should you consider discussing with the parents and sending her to a mental hospital for further treatment? Of course. If she's not at ease, I can find another attending physician, and I'll pay the expenses. My parents had passed away long ago, and my aunt who raised me cut off my living expenses after I became an adult. I scolded all over and finally understood why they were so confident to let me go. There was once a question: how can a normal person prove that he is normal when locked in a mental hospital? The answer is, there is no solution. Ian is an authority in the industry. It's very difficult for others to have the courage to overturn his diagnosis for the patients he has diagnosed. This road has been blocked by him. 13 because of Ian's words. The counselor didn't dare to let me move to the new dormitory either. She made an appointment for me 3 days later. It would take me to see the doctor in person. If it was really that serious, she would arrange for me to be hospitalized. By then, it would be truly impossible to escape. I was unwilling to be toyed with like this and secretly booked a plane ticket to the capital. No matter how powerful Ian was, he couldn't cover the sky with one hand. There were always more powerful psychologists than him. As long as I could get a diagnosis of being mentally normal, I could send the two of them in. The departure time of the plane was Wednesday night. I chose it on purpose. Lucy has gone out to participate in club activities. Ian has an academic conference. And Ryan is on a business trip. It's the safest time to leave now. I carried a small suitcase, walked out of the school gate, and hailed a taxi to the airport. Thank you. I lowered my head, busy communicating with my classmates in the capital. When I took my eyes off my mobile phone, I was suddenly stunned. The car was speeding on the Ring Road Expressway and had already entered the wealthy area. Sir, have you taken the wrong? The question stuck in my throat. Through the rear-view mirror, I saw a pair of familiar eyes. Cold-looking peach blossom-shaped eyes. Slightly upturned. It was Ryan. No mistake. Shirley, today is the day for you to go home. I was stunned for a second, then decisively picked up my mobile phone and dialed the police. The man in the front passenger seat said softly, "Pull over. I'll go to the back." I didn't even notice that Ian was sitting in the front passenger seat. The moment the call was connected, Ian opened the door. His long and broad palm covered my mouth. Gently, he took away my mobile phone and hung up the call. Do you want to run away? He pinched my jaw, forcing me to look at him. And a pitying smile curled on his lips. What a pity. Our Shirley can't escape. 14. They abducted me to a spacious apartment. Ryan turned on the living room light. The pale blue light didn't illuminate very clearly. I had caught a cold, and as soon as I entered the room, I sneezed several times. Ryan went to run a bath for me. Ian, on the other hand, slowly laid down the suitcase, opened it, and packed my things for me. You've prepared a lot, but most of them are not really needed. We've prepared everything for you. I shivered. I was unwilling. Why me? Ian's thumb wiped my wet tears and smeared them on my lips. Shirley, I don't like you crying. You know, the tears were salty, and my mouth tasted bitter. Can't you let me go? Ian laughed and suddenly hooked my waist, saying softly, no. When Ryan came back after running the hot water, I had already been lured into the bedroom by Ian. Separated by a door, Ryan asked, Ian, where is she? Ian was standing behind me. In the darkness, he used a tone so charming that it made people's hearts tingle, coaxing gently, Shirley, tell me, if I go a bit too far and he hears it, will he break down the door? In a panic, I wanted to run away. I grasped the doorknob and was about to press it down. Damn! Ian pressed on my collar from behind. Because of inertia, I was afraid of accidentally bumping into the door, and gasped in pain. The culprit Ian, however, laughed out loud. Shh! Be quiet. Then, he said loudly to the outside. Just now she said she was hungry and went to the kitchen. Look for her again. 15. The consequence of angering Ryan was that I was tied to his side. This outfit looks good. Ryan leaned against the door, smiling with his lips curled, staring at me in the mirror. He held a rope in his hand to ensure that I was within 2 meters of him, in case I took the opportunity to run away while he was not paying attention. All the clothes I brought out to wear were taken away by them. Only pajamas were left in the wardrobe. My face was burning. Can I apply to change? Ryan gave a gentle pull, and the force on my waist dragged me towards the door. Have breakfast. Ian was already neatly dressed, sitting at the table reading a newspaper. The white shirt was neatly buttoned up to the top button, and the cuffs were slightly rolled up, revealing smooth muscle lines. Ryan was wearing a loose black t-shirt and half-length work pants. Only my hair was messy. My nightgown was sloppy, like a barely clothed vagrant. Hearing the movement, Ian raised his eyes. His deep gaze fell on me, and he curled his lips slightly. Come here. Ryan didn't stop him either and let go of the rope. I walked over barefoot, and was hugged into Ian's arms. His 5 fingers wantonly rubbed my hair, like stroking a pet. Ryan will be with you today. Be good at home. After a long silence, I said, I want to go to school. Ian raised his eyes. His gaze seemed to see through me easily through his glasses. Shirley, don't have any wrong ideas. You are ours. My breath hitched, and I carefully kissed his lips. They were very thin and cold, but when he bit back, he was like a fierce beast. I was mentally tense, always on guard against he and devouring me. Fortunately, he happily curled his lips and responded to me. Shirley, this is the first time you've kissed me on your own initiative. I breathed evenly a little, and looked at him with pleading eyes. Teacher Zhu, please. I knew what to say to make him give in. He casually agreed. Okay. Leave it to me. Ian left with an ambiguous statement, leaving me with the jealous Ryan. Stop looking. Your husband is here. He yanked me over, a smile not reaching his eyes. Shirley doesn't seem to know what it means to be fair. Today, I'll teach you. 16. That night, when I was dug out from under the quilt. I was still mechanically repeating, I love Ryan. My voice was hoarse. My eyes were closed. And there were still some scars on my body. Because of some actions in the morning. I was punished. Only half an hour ago was I allowed to rest. It's me. Came Ian's characteristic voice. The next second, I was held in a warm embrace. I was so startled that I shivered. You. Why are you back? If I don't come back, can I hear your true feelings? Ian's originally gentle movement suddenly changed its flavor. I was wholeheartedly thinking of coming back to fulfill your dream. Now it seems that we haven't taught you well. I was fully awake. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Ryan replied coldly. Oh. So that sentence just now was a lie to me? I finally understood that they were determined to make me suffer. And there was no way to avoid it. With a click, something was fastened around my neck. I stared in astonishment. What are you going to do? Ian smiled and pushed aside the hair in front of my face for me. Baby. This is a gift for you. I turned my head to look at the full-length mirror in the bedroom. On my slender neck, there was an extra very thin silver collar. There were no patterns at all. Very plain. Ian stroked my neck obsessively and gently pinched it with his thumb and index finger. Smiling and saying, there is a lethal dose of muscle relaxant in this. Ryan and I each have a remote control. Guess. If one day you leave without saying goodbye, where will we find your body? I started to tremble violently all over. They had gone completely crazy. An excessive amount of muscle relaxant will completely paralyze the human respiratory muscles. And one will die of suffocation. He reached out his hand towards me. I hit Ian's hand hard. Don't touch me. Because of anger and fear. My chest heaved up and down. Ian lowered his eyes, looking at his red hand. Ryan. Is this the result of your one-day teaching? I just taught her well. You made her angry. Don't blame me. It seems that you don't know what the rules are. Ian gently swept over my swollen lips from being kissed. It doesn't matter. We will teach you slowly. It rains a lot in autumn. Inside the room, separated by a window. It was so hot that it made people feel flustered in their hearts. I lay in Ryan's arms, with my chin firmly held by him. I just saw myself in the mirror. Tears stained my eyelashes. And my cheeks were bright red. Like a dried-up fish. Desperately trying to break free from the entanglement of the deep sea and come up to the surface to take a breath. Ryan gently stroked my hair. And his slender fingers rubbed against my hair roots, bringing a deadly tingling sensation. Surely, if you admit your mistake, I will let you go. No, I'm not wrong. Ryan's originally somewhat pity-filled eyes gradually became lifeless. Really? He asked gently. Suddenly, he exerted force with his hand. The whiny voice was stopped by Ryan. His tone was cold. Since you can't say something pleasing, just keep your mouth shut. 17. 1 week after disappearing, I returned to class. All my classmates thought I was sick and cast concerned glances at me. Lucy remained silent all the time, sitting diagonally behind me, without saying a word. After class that day, she called me from behind. Shirley, are you living with them? I held my textbooks and walked past her without paying any attention. Lucy rushed over, grabbed my collar and pushed me hard against the wall. During the tugging, the silver collar hidden under my turtleneck sweater, and the dense hickey marks were exposed. She suddenly shivered all over. You. I quietly straightened my collar. They are from them. Are you satisfied? It's all because of you. Lucy's face was as white as a sheet. No. I just wanted to give you to Ryan. I felt a lump in my throat. In a flash, I suddenly understood something. Do you like Ian? Lucy seemed to have her secret thoughts exposed. And her face looked extremely ugly. I was burning with anger and pushed her hard. Is this the reason you hurt me? Aren't you shameless? Have you suffered? Lucy's lips were pale. I thought that if you had him, you wouldn't accept Ian anymore. But why are you so greedy? She was really crazy. She ignorantly pushed me into the abyss. But she wanted to blame me for not taking her with me. Have you ever thought that from the very beginning? I didn't want either of them. Because of her, I became an animal begging for mercy. Even freedom had to be exchanged at a price. And from the beginning to the end, I didn't know why. Lucy, you should really see what you have done. I lowered my head, quickly wrote a note, stuffed it to her, took a deep look at her, and then turned and left. 18. Click. The light in the living room was on. I walked in slowly. Ian was sitting at the dining table, looking relaxed. Shirley, you're back late. Go change your clothes. I saw the pajamas on the sofa. Indeed, in this house, I had no dignity. I borrowed some psychology books today. Ian raised his eyebrows in surprise. Do you want to choose psychology? Yes. After graduating from undergraduate, I will have to choose a research direction. If I choose psychology, in the future, like Ian, I will become a psychiatrist. Okay. Ian agreed readily. Do you have a favorite tutor? You. Ian slightly curled his lips, his eyes full of scrutiny. Can you tell me the reason? I like you. Is that not okay? He leaned forward slightly, and his fingertips gently slid across my nose bridge and lips. Shirley, I like the way you tell blatant lies. If you don't agree, I will choose anatomy instead. Anyway, I can also like Ryan. No. I promise you. Ian knocked on the table, his eyes gentle. I should teach you very well. During the days when Ryan was on a business trip, I was almost in hell. Ian insanely set up a reward and punishment mechanism. There would be a reward for a correct answer and a punishment for a wrong one. And he deliberately chose abstruse things to test me. One afternoon, I ran out of Ian's room in a panic, with bruises on my knee that hadn't faded yet. Ryan had just entered the door and hugged me at once. What's wrong? Ian followed from behind. Shirley, if you make a mistake, you have to be punished. Since last time, Ian seemed to have fallen in love with this way. Ryan lowered his head and gently sniffed my hair, frowning. Are you abusing her? No. Just teaching. My mind was on the verge of collapse. I huddled tightly in Ryan's arms. I just want to be with you today. Ryan brushed aside the messy hair and wiped the dirt off my cheek for me. Okay. You belong to me today. 19. Under Ryan's protection, I finally had a good sleep. At dusk, I opened my eyes warily and found Ryan holding me. His originally cold eyes were tinged with a little imperceptible tenderness because of the light. You've been asleep for 2 days and 1 night. His high-bridged nose cast a side shadow in the light. For a moment, there was an inexplicable sense of familiarity. My thinking was sluggish. Have I seen you somewhere? Ryan didn't speak, but I could see that he was very happy. High school? Junior high school? Ryan kissed me. Think again. Think carefully. No. Kindergarten? I stared at him blankly, and suddenly widened my eyes in shock. You've finally recognized me. Ryan gently kissed me. You've saved me so many times. Why don't you remember? I suddenly remembered the old alley where my parents lived before they died. At that time, there was a boy who was always blocked at the entrance of the alley to be asked for money after school every day. The worst time was when he was knocked into a plastic bucket and rolled down the steps. I couldn't stand it, and called an adult to call the police. Later, my parents died in a car accident, and I was taken away by my aunt. I couldn't remember many people clearly. So it was him. I opened my mouth. But Ryan stopped me. You must want me to let you go, right? He chuckled softly. Surely. Because of your interference. I was bullied even more severely. At that time, I wanted to drag you back every day to be punished. Now that I've achieved my goal, why would I let you go? My eyes changed from surprise to horror. Ryan loved my hands and clasped them upwards. You've had enough rest. Then it's my turn. 20 in September. I entered graduate school. I became Ian's student. On the first day when I entered his office, I stared at the honors on the wall without blinking. What's wrong? Shirley? You seem to have never told me about yourself. I'll tell you whatever you want to hear. He pulled out the chair and sat opposite me. His gentle eyes were on me all the time. I leaned forward gently and hooked his tie. What do you like about me? Ian's eyes shifted slightly downward and he smiled. I like your whole body. Then, I pulled him closer and stared into his unfathomable eyes. Is it because I'm very similar to someone else? Suddenly he pinched my jaw, and his smile gradually turned cold. Shirley, after being punished last time, haven't you learned your lesson? I once saw a photo of a woman in Ian's wallet. She looked very much like me. Maybe this was the reason why Ian was so obsessed with me. The force on my chin was great. He lifted me up and almost roughly dragged me to the washbasin mirror. In the softest voice possible, he warned me. Mention it one more time, and I'll let you have a good look at how stupid you are. I suppressed the anger and shame in my heart and grinned. I'm sorry. I was wrong. 21 Ian's secret had always bothered me. November 13th was Ian's birthday. Ryan was not at home. Ian gave me a day off to prepare a gift. I knew what he wanted. I used to think that Ryan was a little more radical than Ian. But the fact was that the violent factor in Ian made me more frightened. If he hadn't deliberately suppressed it, it would be a question whether I could survive. When Ian came home in the evening, there were home-cooked dishes and a cake with burning candles on the table. Ian stopped and stood at the door. I sat in the candlelight and sang the happy birthday song to him with a smile. He stood in the darkness. After I finished singing, he said softly, Shirley, you should know that this is not what I want. What he liked were those oddly shaped pajamas in the wardrobe. But he also listened to the song. I carefully cut the cake and held it in front of him, sincerely saying, Ian, happy birthday. He lifted his dark eyes and stared at me. The next second, he grabbed my wrist. What are you doing? I love you. So I want to give you a complete birthday. Since becoming Ian's student, I indirectly learned from his colleagues that he had never celebrated his birthday, because his sister died on that day. Ian had always been vigilant about my touching on to abstruse psychological knowledge, in case I grew up too fast and caused a lot of unnecessary trouble. However, the higher one stands, the more likely one is to overlook some simple, plain and practical ways. For example, gossip. I gently kissed him, my voice being just the right degree of soft. You? Can you love me as much as I love you? Ian silently raised his eyes, his voice hoarse. I've always loved you. But in your heart, there is another person. The night itself is an ambiguous catalyst. It stirs up the human desire to pour out secrets. He held my fingertips together and rubbed them gently and slowly. His passionate kisses fell until the oxygen was exhausted. It's not what you think. She is my sister. Later, she left me and ran away. So he hates me, who looks similar to his sister, as much as he hates his sister. Imprisonment and possession are just ways to torture me. On this point, Mayan and he happened to have the same idea. Then, unfortunately, such a state of mind should be changed. I put my arms around his neck and made a solemn promise. I will never leave Ian. I took in all the fluctuations in his eyes and handed the bow-shaped silk ribbon on my chest into Ian's hand. Well, now, it's time for you to unwrap the present. 22 After that day, I began to appear frequently beside Ian. Ryan had quite a few complaints about this. Finally, one morning, he couldn't bear it any longer. Shirley, I think we need to have a good talk. The ambiguous voice filled my ears, and a tingling sensation spread from the back of my neck, all the way to my tailbone. I softened my body and gripped Ian's cuff in vain, signaling him to save me. But Ian was indifferent. I have no right to ask my partner to give you up. Learned to call for reinforcements. Ryan chuckled. Pried open my fingers. Surely. Just keep looking at him like that. Yes. Very beautiful. What was I thinking at this time? I was thinking that one day they would pay the due price. 1 year passed in the blink of an eye. At this time, I was in my second year of postgraduate study and was discussing my thesis with Ian day and night. Perhaps seeing his own reflection in me, Ian's discipline over me became more and more lax. And he even allowed me to communicate with many well-known teens very male. Of course, every email needed to be reviewed by him before being sent. Perhaps sensing something. One late night, Ryan held me and said, "Shirley, give me a child." I pressed against his chest, feeling his strong and rhythmic heartbeat, and said faintly, "Ryan, what makes you think you can protect him well?" As soon as these words came out, Ryan suddenly froze. "The person who protected you has been locked up. Isn't it enough? Don't you think you are like a jinx?" This sentence was too harsh. In the past, if I had said it, I would surely have suffered a great deal. But tonight, Ryan held me and said nothing. After a long time, he tightened his grip on my hair and pressed my face hard against his. The veins on the back of his hand clearly visible. "I see. Shirley. In this life, having you is enough for me.